Hi guys, thanks for tuning in. This week I'm interviewing Father Bob Blaney, a Catholic priest working in the Diocese of Boston, Massachusetts. Now I know what you're thinking. What can a Catholic priest have to teach me about living a life of success and fulfillment? What's going to be his advice? Pray for guidance? Well, I'm sure that would be among the advice Father Bob or any Catholic priest might give you. But Father Bob has a really interesting and really unique story that I think we can all learn from regardless of our religious faith. Before becoming a priest, Father Bob did a lot of other interesting things and made some interesting choices in his life. I chose to interview him because he's someone who has been no stranger to taking risks, following his heart, and doing what he wants despite what other people think he should do. Before becoming a Catholic priest, Father Bob earned an undergraduate accounting degree, which he then basically decided not to use. Soon after graduation, he announced to his parents and friends that he was going to chase his dreams. He moved out of Boston and moved to New York City to try and become a Broadway show actor. Many people in his life told him he was crazy. Becoming a Broadway show star is not a typical career path for most recent college grads with an accounting degree. And with no prior acting experience and very little training, he struggled for years. But he stuck to his guns. He knew what he wanted, who he was, and what his passions were. But after years of struggling, it was by banking on his truly unique strengths and talents that actually landed him his big break. See, Father Bob was a piano child prodigy. He was a classically trained pianist, meaning that he was trained on classical piano pieces like Bach concertos with some of the most selective piano teachers in Massachusetts while he was growing up. And then he decided in his mid to late 20s to pick the piano back up. Why? Because that's what he was naturally good at. And he reasoned that there must be some opportunity for him if he just stuck to his strengths and his passions. And believe it or not, before long, Father Bob became one of two leads in an extremely successful Broadway show, which was so successful that it eventually became a traveling show across the US and Canada. It was called Two Pianos, Four Hands. Why did Father Bob get it? Well, the script called for two actors who were also expert, classically trained piano players. It was almost as if the part was written for Father Bob, so he was on his way. He was the star of a Broadway show, touring the country, earning standing ovations everywhere he went. He made it. He got his big break and successfully broke into the big time. Then, after he had made it, after he realized the success he had spent so much time dreaming about and working toward, Father Bob made another huge decision and another huge detour in his career. He called his parents and friends and told them he was moving back to Massachusetts, giving up acting, to once again follow his heart, and that he was joining the priesthood. I met Father Bob while attending Mass in South Boston years ago, and his speaking style and enthusiasm for life has been an inspiration to me ever since. He's one of the happiest, most fulfilled, and most enthusiastic people I know, and I can't wait for you to hear some of his views on what it means to succeed in life. I think we all have a lot to learn from Father Bob, not only about sticking to your religious faith and beliefs, which he can certainly talk about, but also about simply standing up for who you are, what you want, and what your heart is telling you to do. So welcome, Father Blaney. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I think you have a really exciting story that I can't wait for people to hear about. I was able just to kind of share your background with people a little bit, but what I find really inspiring about you and your story is you had kind of two key moments in your life where you really changed direction. You had an inkling in your heart, you knew you wanted to kind of chase your dreams, and you had the strength to really just go after it and do what you felt was right for you in your life. And so to kind of start the interview today, I want to dig into those two moments just a little bit, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. So to set the stage, earlier in your life, so you've just graduated from college with an accounting degree, assumably to become an accountant. And so spend 4 years and a whole lot of money on a college education to learn how to do accounting, and then you graduate and you decide, you know what, I'm going to move to New York City and become a Broadway actor, or try to become a Broadway actor. Now, Father Blaney, I've worked in business for a long time. I know a lot of accountants, and not too many of them leave accounting to go pursue Broadway acting, right? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what your thought process was and what that part of your life was for you.
Yeah, sure. I had always wanted to be an actor. Since I was a kid, I was always performing, but when it came time to apply to colleges, I thought, well, being an accountant is a more practical thing to do, and I was encouraged to go in that direction. And I could see the practicality to it, and so that's what led me to Boston College to pursue accounting. And it wasn't until midway through, actually my junior year, I had my first professional acting job, and I said to my folks, I said, I just want to do this just to get it out of my system before I enter the real world. Yeah. That was kind of the end of it all. I recognized that that's really where my heart was, that's really where I was most enthusiastic about pursuing. And so I mentioned to my parents at the end of that summer that I was interested in pursuing an acting career, and you can imagine their chagrined looks on their faces after sending me to business school. But they were very supportive and recognized that that's really what was going to make me happy. And so they gave me their blessing. And a few months after graduating, I did move to New York City to pursue an acting career.
Right. And so how did things work for you those first few years in New York, pursuing acting as a career?
They were tough years, and they were exciting years at the same time. 2% of actors work, and so I was putting myself through acting school because I hadn't studied that while I was in college. So I was simultaneously going through school while auditioning, having survival jobs, and I was fortunate enough to get work early on too. So I was working, but every job would end after 3 to 4 months, and then you'd be unemployed again. And so I was kind of doing a bunch of things at the same time. But I was young, and I just felt like I was in the right place. It felt like that's what I should be doing. So although it was difficult, it was very exciting.
Excellent. So you were a bit of a piano child prodigy, right? And so 10 years into your career at New York City as an actor, where you're kind of hopping between jobs and waiting for that big break, you decide that you want to take the piano back up again, which you hadn't done in a long time. Tell me what was behind that decision. It seems pretty random, right? That you're trying to make it as an actor and you're going to sink your talents and your time into going back to the piano just because you knew it was something you loved.
Yeah. Well, it really took me by surprise. It did seem to come out of the blue. I was working as an actor in a theater in New Hampshire, and a fellow just about my age came into town for a weekend to give a concert. He was a pianist from Zurich, and he gave a piano concert, and I went to this, and I watched it, and he was terrific, and I thought, wow, I could be doing that. Yeah. And I realized, well, how come you're not doing that? And then I said to myself, it's because you haven't played the piano since you were 13 years old, and now you're 31. So well, how do you possibly think you could be doing that? Mm-hmm. And it was a real, I don't know what the word, it was real kind of disillusioning, because I think I had a fantasy life that's something I could do, and yet I had abandoned that gift many years ago. And what happened was I then went through this process of recognizing that it was a specific gift that was given to me. I didn't deserve it or anything. God gave me that gift. It was a talent that I had that I felt like I'd thrown it away, and that I hadn't done anything with it. And so I ended up my contract in New Hampshire. I moved back to New York City, and I purchased a little upright piano, and I started playing the piano again, and for myself, because I felt that it was something that I needed to do. It was kind of a cathartic experience of between me and God. I felt like, okay, God, you gave me a gift. I did nothing with it, so I'm going to do something with it now. And it was kind of on paper an unrealistic thing to be doing. I mean, who was I to think that I'm going to become a classical pianist now? And I started playing the piano again, revisiting pieces that I played when I was 5 years old and 6 and 7, and I was terrible because my hands were completely out of shape. But as the days and weeks went on, I got better at playing the piano, and within 3 months I was able to play this Bach concerto that the fellow in the concert had played.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it, and I thought, well, wow, this is not because I'm so wonderful, and it's really because I felt I was being rewarded by God by trying to make something of the gift that He gave me.
Right.
And so that was the catalyst for it all. It was a personal thing, and my agent and friends kind of thought I was crazy, what I was pursuing, because classical piano was really not a very marketable skill. They were telling me that it's not going to help my acting career at all. Right. Why am I wasting 5 and 6 hours a day sequestered at home practicing the piano? So it was kind of, it looked kind of nutty on paper, what I was doing, but it just felt like this is what I have to do. It felt like I was driven.
Right. So this is really interesting, right? Because at this point in your life, you're still trying to pursue becoming a Broadway star and an actor in New York City, but you just have this hunch, I'm really good at piano. This is what I really love, and so I'm going to go after it, even though there's no clear connection between practicing classical piano and making it as a Broadway star, right?
Yes, you're exactly right.
Really interesting. So tell me what happens from there. I think it's such an interesting story.
Yeah, well, it was something that I really needed to do for myself. It was kind of a personal little conversation that I was having with God about, okay, I want to make use of this gift you gave me. And what happened was I started, immersing myself in practicing the piano, and despite objections from my agent and friends that it was a waste of time, that it really wasn't going to help my acting career at all, and I never could have predicted. I knew I needed to do it. It just felt right, and so I did. But I never could have predicted what was going to happen, which was within a year, a show comes into New York City called Two Pianos, Four Hands. It's a two-man play, and it's about two guys who had been child pianists pursuing the life of concert pianists as children, and they never made it to Carnegie Hall as adults. And the whole play is a flashback, looking back on their lives, saying, well, why didn't you make it? Does this mean you're a loser now? How did you compromise your life? What does success actually mean anyway? This was kind of the plot of the show, told in a bunch of flashback scenes. And so, not having any money to buy a ticket, I ushered to see the show, and I was blown away by it. I thought, oh my gosh, it seems to be so similar to my own life journey. You would have thought I wrote it for myself. Right. To make a long story short, because there were many steps along the way, but I ended up through the nudging of my agent auditioning for this show, even though I thought I was not good enough. The show ends in a classical mini concert. The two actors sit down at grand pianos and play a Bach concerto. And again, very ironic, because a year prior, learned a Bach concerto on my own, my own little private therapeutic journey. And I just couldn't believe the series of, what I was thinking as coincidences at the time, how they were lining up. And to cut to the chase, I got cast in this show, and it was mind-blowing. It really elevated me to a whole other level in my career, and it allowed me to not only, have that experience as an actor, but to see what it vicariously would have been like to be a concert pianist, because every show, at the end of the 2 hours, the two guys sit down and play this 12-minute Bach concerto. So I kind of was able to live out that fantasy later on in life, and it was a really good example of something that really seemed so impractical on paper. Right. Really, wasn't going to help you at all, right. And for whatever reason, I just felt that, this is what I needed to do. Little could I have known that it was going to help me in the biggest way that it could have. It was a show that was tailor-made to me, and the only reason I got it was because I could play classical piano really well, something that I couldn't do a year prior. So it was really it was quite a journey, and what I thought were coincidences along the way, I started to think, maybe there's something more going on than a bunch of seeming coincidences.
Right, which kind of brings you to the next step of the story, right? So at this point, you've left Massachusetts behind.
Yes.
You've moved to New York City with an accounting degree to make it on Broadway. 10 years later, you finally make it by banking on your talent in classical piano. You become this big star. You're touring around the country in this traveling two-man show, and you've realized the success that so many actors don't, right? You mentioned earlier the success rate in acting is so low, and you've overcome the odds, and now you're on the Broadway show, you're on the show traveling the country, making all this money, and you decide to make another big change in your life to become a priest. So tell me about that part of the story, because that's the next big move you make in your career. It's kind of a risk, and I'm sure a lot of people are telling you, "Are you crazy? You can move to Hollywood and be the next Brad Pitt," and you're going back to Massachusetts. Well, you know what I mean. You're on the brink of stardom, and you decide to go back and become a priest. So tell me what was behind that decision, and was it scary for you?
Yeah. This was slightly different than me starting to play the piano in that I did the show, Two Pianos, Four Hands, for 3 years, so that was a long time, and it changed my life in a number of ways. One thing that accompanied my journey there was my prayer life really grew. I had tremendous stage fright in being in front of people, particularly playing classical piano, and so I was continually praying and asking God for help to get me through. And there were a number of times where I think someone else was playing through me, and I was just watching my body, my hands going. But this is to say that I really started asking for help to get me through the situation. And you know, it seems even funny now trying to explain it. But about a year and a half through my journey of doing the show, I wasn't really depressed, but I found myself being kind of like apathetic, like kind of going through the motions and thinking, well, this was great, but now what? Is this it? I had kind of, the grass is always greener, and I had always kind of wondered, oh, what's it going to be like to make that type of money and to meet the people on that level of my field, and I did that, and it was wonderful and exciting. Once that wore off, I found myself in a state of saying, is this what I should be doing with my life? And because my prayer life had become so strong, I was asking God for answers on what I should be doing with my life. And, God is full of surprises. He's got a funny sense of humor. And little did I ever think that, the thought of, oh, Bob, you should be a priest, would ever happen. And that idea actually popped into my head one day praying, and I thought, that's crazy. That is absolutely not at all what I should be doing. And a similar theme, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but a similar theme does accompany this journey that did the piano thing. They both seemed like crazy ideas, and they both came along with the notion that I kept saying to myself, who do you think you are? You're way too old to be doing this. It's too late to be doing this. At 31 years old, to try to be a classical pianist, at this point in time now, I'm 35 years old, thinking, oh, I think I'll pursue being a Catholic priest. I hadn't gone, I hadn't in college studied theology or philosophy. I had never talked to priests. I didn't, they seemed to be ideas that came out of nowhere. And there was the similar theme for me was thinking, you're too old. It's too late for you. And so that's where the fear factor, I guess, came into both of these decisions of that crossing my mind, like, oh boy, okay, everyone, and wait till people hear this one. Not that I'm going to start. I want to learn the piano again, but I want to pursue being a Catholic priest, and that certainly was a shock to my family and friends. But I think trusting my gut instinct. That was something that I learned to do when I started playing the piano again a few years earlier. So when it happened, 4 years later, this calling from God to to pursue seminary life, I more readily recognized, the same thing is happening again, and was able to kind of trust my gut instinct and not worry about what other people thought about that, to try to trust this feels right. And knowing that the same feelings of joy and enthusiasm were going along with this decision. I was able to recognize, this is what happened a few years back when I started playing the piano too. Right. So maybe this is the next move for me.
Yeah.
So
so interesting. So I first met you a couple of years ago, right, where I had gone to Mass and you were speaking at the front of church, giving the Mass. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, man, this priest is really excited about what he's doing. He's so excited in his faith and so excited about his role of a priest. And you just emitted so much happiness and joy through speaking at Mass and through your homilies. And you were so inspiring to me. And the first thing I thought when I saw you was, man, this guy is really successful. Like, he's really found happiness and success in your life. And it was only after that that I learned how much you had given up and the different pivots you had made in your life to get to that point. So you've reached a point in your life where I would argue that you're pretty happy and successful. I know nobody's perfect and nobody's life is perfect. But after going through everything that you've gone through to this point in your life, what do you think has been your key to finding success and finding happiness?
I think a big key was, a few things. A big one was not caring about what other people think. I think when I was younger, I compared myself to others in whatever realm it was. I want to be a singer. I'd think of singers that I liked, and I try to imitate their voices. I want to be an actor. Well, actors look like this. I need to dress. I need to look. I try to look like other people. And when I became comfortable with who I was, that's when success found me. I gave up playing the piano when I was 13 years old because I wanted to fit in with the other kids at school. I wanted to be cool, and I thought being a piano nerd is not really a cool thing to do. And I threw away something that was so important, that was a natural gift that God gave me. And when I kind of was, I'm a very stubborn guy, so it was many, many years later when I finally recognized this and did something with it. And not only could I play the piano, but my acting career takes off. So, not only do I get that sense of inner peace and joy, but the quote-unquote material success went along with it, too. And the same thing, with the priesthood. Someone would look at me and say, geez, well, you're a priest. Okay, that's great for you. I would not want to do that. Yeah. And I think that's great for someone to say that. I wish when I was younger, could say something like that, recognizing that something is good for someone else and it's not good for someone else. And to recognize we all have something that we're better than someone else at, something that we were given, a natural talent and a natural gift, and to recognize what that is and then say, okay, how can I channel that into something? And oftentimes, feelings of inner peace and calm go along with that. At least they did for me, letting me know, that I was doing the right thing.
Great. So that's a really great transition, right? It's really interesting you talk about feelings like you're too old, it's not practical to be moving in this direction or the other at different points in your life. And as a coach to young professionals, I encounter that in people all the time. So they have these inklings that they ought to be going in a particular direction, but they feel like it's impractical to be doing for a number of different reasons. It's too late, or they're not good enough, so on and so forth. So how did you overcome those types of barriers? I'm sure as you're making these transitions in your life and moving from one thing to something that's completely different, that you had some inner doubts, or maybe you didn't have a ton of confidence that this was the right decision. How did you overcome that and say, you know what, I'm going to go after it because this is what I ought to do. This is the right move for me.
There are two parts to that question, I think. Recognizing that, okay, here I am in life, and then there's my past. that I had a lot of regrets about. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? I should have done this. And then actually recognizing, okay, that I cannot change. I cannot affect that at all. So I'm here. Now, a year from now, 5 years from now, I'm going to be here. Where do I want to be then? And I'd envision for myself, well, I'd like to be, here, X, whatever it is.
Right.
And so that was the initial motivation, thinking, well, if I don't pursue X, I'm going to be a year older and still right here. And just imagine what my level of regret is going to be then, a year from now. Right. I'm going to be kicking myself even more. Why didn't I pursue such and such? Mm-hmm. The second part there is I really struggled with perfectionism. And this was something that it was from my early days of training of being a pianist, a classical pianist. It was either perfect or it was bad. Mm-hmm. There was no in between. And so you'd spend forever and ever on arm placement and everything. And so I got to the point of this really may have been part of why I stopped playing the piano at 13 years old. It felt like so much pressure and none of the fun. And so getting back into it in anything I do in life, I think it's something I used to hold as like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, as if it was a wonderful thing. And it does drive me, as I think it does many people, to work harder for something. But there can be a crippling effect to it as well, where you say, I have to be perfect. And the reality is none of us are ever going to be perfect. Right. And so what does that mean? It means, well, you strive for something, and then you've got to, and I'm speaking for myself, I needed to say, okay, calm down, say a little prayer to God, ask for help, and then see what happens. Right. And you'll get a little closer to that mark than you are now. Right. Perhaps a lot closer to that mark. But I needed to kind of shed off the feelings of it's too late for me, I'm too old, why bother? And I'm never going to be perfect, so why bother? Mm-hmm. And those were two demons, if you will, that I battled throughout life, and they're still there with me. They're dormant. Sometimes they rear an ugly head, right. But that's something that I recognize now, and able to hopefully manage.
Really interesting. So once you took that leap, how did it feel? How would you describe that feeling?
It was something I never could have. Never would have imagined. Me getting the piano show and getting ordained a priest have been brought along such in different ways, feelings of joy and that I've been so excited about it. There have been nights that I initially couldn't sleep. And I think the most important thing that I found, and this really was the same for both. Goals that I was achieving, which was the piano and the show and the priesthood, is that it felt right for me. That's why it felt. That's why I was so joyous. Yeah, right. I wasn't doing it to please someone else. I wasn't doing it to make money. Certainly, an actor is such a crazy life. Sometimes you make money, sometimes you do, most times you don't. Right. And the priesthood, of course, money's not even an issue. Right. So the sign of it for me was just feeling like I'm doing the right thing. This is what I should be doing, and I felt that, that's what God created me to do. Mm-hmm. Something perhaps that no one else can do. Yeah. As well, in a certain area. And we all have that. I think the trick is discovering it and owning it.
Awesome. Couldn't agree more. So to kind of wrap up the interview, just a couple last questions. If you could go back in time and talk to the you when you were in your early 20s, what advice would you have for yourself?
Don't worry. Be yourself, own that, and don't don't try to please other people. Don't be concerned what other people will think about you. Trust your instincts. I think those would be some things I would say to my 22-year-old self.
Great. And what about for other people? So what would be your top 3 pieces of success for a young professional who's just trying to figure out the right path for him or her and figure out what to do with their life?
You know, Ryan, I think I would say the same things, really. I can only speak from my own experience,
Sure.
but yeah, being less concerned with what something looks like to the world, and finding one's true self. And when you do that, you find your proper relationship to yourself, to your friends and family, and to the world. Right. And when that happens, I think that's what one can call success.
Awesome. Well, Father Blaney, you have such an exciting, inspiring story, and I thank you so much for taking the time to tell it to me today. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.